I just say thank you to the Broadcasting Sustainability Network and to the Screen Greening Coalition for helping to spread the message on the Carbon Calculator webinar. Also to Dara and Alex for their work so far, both on productions and with me in webinars over the last couple of weeks, spreading the message of sustainable production. I think it's obviously a really important topic. We have over 65 participants signed up for today, and we had 95 for the first webinar. I think it shows that this topic in particular is extraordinarily important to the production sector at the moment, and one I think will only grow. And I'm really glad we're able to take that momentum and go with it at the moment. I'm going to pass with to Dara. Here we are.
Thanks so much, Anthony. Really appreciate that. And welcome everyone to Using the Carbon Calculator. This is the third webinar in Screen Producers Ireland's latest series on sustainability. Some brief introductions. My name is Dara Gowan. I'm a sustainability practitioner currently working on Bodkin, a Netflix series produced by Wild Atlantic Pictures, WIP, and Higher Ground Productions. I've undergone training from Albert, Ad Green, and Greenspark Group, and I'm currently the Deputy Chair of the Sustainability Guild of Ireland. And I'm delighted to be joined by our two panelists, Alex De Valera and Anthony Muldoon. Alex is Director of Ecoscope and has worked domestically and internationally as a sustainability manager on productions of all sizes for the likes of Netflix, Amazon, Metropolitan, and Pull the Trigger, to name but a few. Alex is the training officer of the Sustainability Guild and has recently developed a workshop for Screen Ireland to train sustainability practitioners. She's currently studying circular economy and sustainability strategies, a course run by the University of Cambridge Business School. And Anthony, as probably already know, is Insights Policy and Communications Manager with SPI and is based permanently in West Cork. Lucky him. He's the acting project manager of Albert in Ireland and on behalf of the Screen Greening Coalition. Before joining SPI, Anthony was advocacy manager with the Kuwait Education Reform Organisation, and he is currently on the board member of the European Producers Association, CEPI. I cannot think of two better people to be having this discussion with. And after our talk, there will be time for questions, so please do put your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll get to them at the end. Since 2011, the Albert Carbon Calculator and later on the Climate Action Plan has been used by productions to calculate emissions and set goals to reduce them. Albert was first used in Ireland in 2019 and has been used on over 200 productions. Other calculators and climate action plans, such as the Peach and Pear systems, Green Film, as well as bespoke calculators used by streamers such as Netflix, have also been used on Irish productions. For anyone who hasn't used a carbon calculator or completed a climate action plan, I'll give a very brief explanation. Productions complete a draft carbon calculator during pre-production, where the budget is used to estimate what the production's spend will be. Everything the production spends money on, from accommodation to travel to materials, has a carbon value attached. A final footprint is completed during wrap when the production knows how much it has spent. Productions can also complete a climate action plan, where it commits to taking certain actions to reduce waste and emissions. And once the plan is complete, Albert, or whatever the governing body is, requests evidence to support the claims for several of the actions that the production has committed to. Earlier in the year, Screen Ireland released their Sustainability Action Plan, and one of the key actions included in that plan is that a carbon calculator must be used on all Screen Ireland funded productions. This is extremely welcome news as we move ever closer to the 2030 deadline, by which Ireland must reduce its emissions by half. During the discussion today, we hope to break down the process of the carbon calculator and the climate action plan so that productions can use them as effectively as possible. But before we get to the how, I might start with you, Anthony, to talk about the why. Why is it so important that productions use a carbon calculator and a climate action plan?
Thanks, man, Dara. Essentially, it's all about reducing emissions on our productions. That is in line with government policy. It is in line with the climate crisis that we're all living with on a day-to-day basis. But it's also the direction of travel for our funders, our broadcasters, and also the international funders and broadcasters that are coming into Ireland. To set the scene, it was in 2018 when the Screen Greening Coalition, which is RTE, TG Ceathair, Virgin Media Television, Broadcasting Authority of Ireland, Screen Ireland, and ourselves, Screen Producers Ireland, came together. And by the way, was and is still the only coalition of funder, broadcaster, and producer body in Europe to be actively working together on climate crisis issues. And it was through that group that we brought Albert into the country on an initial trial 3-year basis. So you had the first footprints being done in Ireland using an Albert calculator in 2019, and that has grown exponentially since the end of COVID, basically. And we're in a situation now where on an all island basis, we've had over 200 footprints done by production companies on productions on the island of Ireland, which is a huge achievement considering we had 4 in 2019. And it's a real sign of, I think, the way in which the production community has engaged with sustainability as a fundamental element of productions, but also how funders and broadcasters are bringing it more and more into the mainstream of their contracting and of their funding. So just to give a context for where we're at right now, TG Ceathair mandate a carbon calculator and Albert footprint for all their contracts since January 21. Virgin Media Television, for all their contracts, have a mandation of a footprint and a carbon action plan / certification. Screen Ireland, as Dara mentioned, from 2023 will be mandating a carbon calculator footprint for all their contracts. RTÉ currently is doing a lot of in-house work on footprints. So, for instance, Late Late Show, Primetime, Late Late Show, Toy Show have been certified, and a lot of their Irish language and other factual programming have had footprints. And the BAI obviously is a funder through the Sound and Vision Fund, and there may be announcements in the future on calculator use for the Sound and Vision Fund contracts, but they have set up the Broadcasting Sustainability Network, which is a pan-industry coalition across both radio and television to look at ways of reducing emissions and introducing sustainability goals into productions. Just to say on, like, we are getting more and more used to footprints and certification in our production life cycles, essentially. And one of the reasons and one of the really positive things about it is that Albert is an internationally renowned brand. And that, you know, there is definitely a clear desire among the stakeholders, so among the broadcasters fund as well, to hold on to Albert, and we are currently in renegotiations on a contract with them. But it is advantageous for us all to be using Albert in that way, and essentially for international audiences looking in, they can recognize the brand and know things are good. But equally, Ireland is setting a benchmark. The work that Crew is doing at the moment on international productions and local productions is phenomenal, and often I talk to Albert about things that are happening, and they're amazed at the level of detail people are going into. There you go.
Thanks so much, Anthony. Yeah, that's fantastic. Like you say, name the game is emissions reduction, waste reduction, and just moving to a more kind of circular, sustainable model. And yeah, like you were saying, I think Albert just seems to be one of the more comprehensive calculators, the best way of tracking all that. A phrase that I'm certain has been tossed around on at least one of these webinars before is what's measurable is manageable. And Alex, you've measured quite a few over your time. So someone who has completed a number of carbon calculators and climate action plans, what benefits have you seen after having done repeated ones, having done so many, and have you kind of brought lessons from one production onto the next, having completed a carbon footprint or climate action plan?
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, to keep it simple, all the answers are in the figures, and knowledge is power. And if you complete your carbon footprint, you can identify the key strategic areas that you need to focus on, as well as creating an effective roadmap and a strategy. And that, again, to emphasize, we're all here about creating precedents, and having knowledge that can be transferable to another production means that there's actual meaningful change happening in the industry and in the sector. So without calculating, in my view, your carbon footprint on a production, it's like trying to be sustainable while being blindfolded. It gives you direction, purpose, and strategy. And a lot of the time where you do see, say, productions calculating their carbon footprint in RAP, for example. So after the fact, you see that during shoot and prep, more time is spent on areas that have the least amount of emissions, and less time is spent on areas that are our main focus, what should be our main focus, such as travel and transport and energy usage. So I guess what, for example, from my first carbon footprint, I could see that straight away. And then going forward, I knew, okay, well, the areas I really need to focus on are travel and transport and filming spaces. So we'd be talking about renewable energy, reduction in international travel, first class flights, etc. So that gave me effective strategy to actually effectively reduce emissions. However, I wouldn't advocate for, not focusing on the other areas at all. One being waste management, especially if you have a zero waste to landfill policy. As Glán, we're very privileged that they operate in that way. The emissions are actually quite minimal, but I would look at waste diversion figures as soft data, i.e. an indication of the level of crew engagement, which is really important in terms of measuring how effective your measures were, how that the level of engagement, and whether the likelihood of people taking on the learnings from this production forward. So in that sense, I mean, ultimately we're talking about changing people's behavior, and that can't be achieved without knowing the facts, and you can't know the facts without calculating your carbon footprint.
100%. Yeah, you touched on so many great things there. Like we talked about in our first webinar, crew engagement, so crucial to kind of get people on board. Like no one person is going to make production sustainable. It's a collective effort. And like you say, talking about sort of calculations towards the end and seeing a lot of, maybe the emissions at the beginning of the production aren't necessarily the highest impact area, it kind of brings us on to our next question to you, Anthony, is just talking about the draft footprint and the climate action plan and the importance of filling it out early on in pre-production. Have you kind of had any questions from production companies looking for advice on this, or just would you agree that it is vital to fill it out early to give you enough time to plan?
Yeah, look, I know honestly the kind of pinch point queries we get on footprints in particular are those who are done in post-production, where they're chasing their tails trying to get the data from during the production. And then that's a very difficult situation, because usually it's someone who hasn't done it before, in fairness to them, and they have been told this is a requirement now, and it's a whole new level of admin that they weren't prepared for. And that's why we advocate people preparing for this in pre-production and bringing it through production into post. It's also why the carbon action plan, for those who are chasing certification, it's why the carbon action plan starts in pre. Because what Albert, and sorry, the reason I'm mentioning this because Albert reformed certification about 2 years ago, and the reason they did was because a lot was being done in post, and it was seen as a box ticking exercise. And obviously that's not what we want to happen. We want this to be a living, breathing part of the production, so that when you get to post, you really have achieved reductions in emissions. So by starting in pre, you are, as we have discussed before, you're setting a tone to the crew and production management for the rest of the production. And you're saying, we are going to track this. We're going to be very aware of it. We're going to take it as part of our admin duties for the production. So at the end, you can see what your missions are. And then for your next production, you can say, right, and again, a number, 10, we'll say. We did 10 here. I want to do 9 the next time. I want to do 8 the next time. And with the carbon action plan, you have to prove to Albert that you are doing what you set out to do in order to get certification. So if you say, for instance, in pre-production, we are going to use renewable diesel, HVO, you need to prove you're doing that. If you say you're going to have hybrid lights, if you say you're going to do LEDs, you need to prove you've done it. And to do that, you need the paper trail that proves you've done it, which is another reason why it's so important to do it in pre through post. And I think that mantra of pre through post is what we need to bed in over the next couple of years, because it's going to become a big part of it,
Yeah, 100%. No, I couldn't agree more. yeah, like say it's set in tone early on, and really like allowing the plan to dictate what you're going to do. I think, having done one myself, you go through and look at the questions, and it says sometimes it can be phrased in a way that is, well, will you do this? And it's kind of, well, you look at what you're going to be doing anyway, and see if it does match that. But I think it really is an opportunity for productions to look at that and say like, okay, well, can we do that? Can we just use mains power? Is it possible for us to not use generators? Can we have no private jets on this? Can there be a negotiation with people to do whatever else?
But Dara, I love that about mains power, because it's something that came up in a webinar we did last year at Ross na Rún, where Louise from Ross na Rún was talking about when they first did a carbon action plan, and
Yeah.
they were chasing certification, and they were trying to find ways, and they realized that on location, when they're shooting in a house or outside a house, they could plug into the mains, and it reduced their emissions. And it was only through looking at it from the prism of a carbon action plan that they made that realization. And it wasn't, it's just that change in vantage point that's really advantageous.
Yeah, it's seen it as like a properly useful tool, something that can really impact the way that your production does, as opposed to just a means of getting certification. Like we say, certification is great. It can't become a box ticking exercise. We don't just want to get the Albert logo. We want to, it needs to be a badge of something done properly, as opposed to just like a box to be ticked. So yeah, like we were saying, just the importance of crew buy-in, of starting early. Alex, we talked about in the first panel the importance of kind of good relationships with departments. How do you build those relationships with departments in order to get the information that you need, both to fill in the carbon footprint and to do a good climate action plan?
I mean, building relationships with all departments is fundamental, and as Anthony said, sets the right tone. And from experience, that is how you achieve results on a production. I truly believe that the foundation of building a good relationship is seeing things from other people's perspectives and walking in their shoes. And I think realizing that departments are, or recognizing more so that departments are experts in their field, and resources to sustainability is fundamental, because I can honestly tell you that over the last few years, the majority of my learnings and progress has come from building good relationships and long-lasting relationships with departments, and getting their perspective on sustainability initiatives. And almost in many ways, when there was, a slight bit of conflict, that kind of dialectical reasoning has made the measures more efficient, and actually reducing emissions effectively in a logistically sound way. So that's one huge benefit of building a really strong relationship from the beginning. And then also actively listening to people's concerns and feedback is really important. And I guess the kind of three principal building blocks to building that good relationship would be having the conversation as early as possible, because more time means more opportunity to be sustainable, and giving departments the means to make change. Communicating the sustainability deliverables with the department, i.e. what we need out of the situation, and facilitating their implementation with departments by being helpful and being a resource to them. And I think another point to recognize in terms of the actual relationship with the departments is that, being a sustainability practitioner is ultimately an advisory role. And you have to realize that the departments are the ones taking action. And once that relationship is founded, it becomes increasingly clear that sustainability isn't just a one-person job, or the success of a production isn't just down to one person. It is, as you said, Dara, a collective effort. And that is the only way to achieve results on a grand scale and the emission reduction strategy that you're trying to implement. And yes, and that all very much comes down to, changing people's behaviors is ultimately trying to get that buy-in and engagement. And that only comes down to building a good relationship from the beginning.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Because you're asking people to to sign on to things maybe they haven't done before. You're asking them to send on data information that they previously wouldn't have had to. Like you say, the only way you're going to do that isn't by kind of barging in and saying you have to do this now. It's listening. It's listening to their process. And I think one of the greatest things that, or thing that I've really enjoyed on Bodkin has just been kind of just coming across all the different things you hadn't heard about departments doing that are sustainable already. Obviously there's a ways to go for everyone, but yeah, like it's like you say, experts in their own field, and it's collective effort. We're only going to get the way together. I might stick with you, Alex, just to kind of dig into, I know one of the things that we had said we'd talk about in this panel is accounts, given that accounts play such a crucial role, particularly in the carbon footprint section when it comes to submitting receipts, data, everything else like that. Is there a way to make it easier for accounts? Is there a special thing that you would do on productions, or I know productions are all different, but yeah, what do you think the most important thing is when it comes to accounts?
Yeah, no, I think ultimately, yeah, I think this is what's really important, again, to recognize, kind of it reiterating my previous point, but building that relationship from the beginning. And honestly, I would say the first meeting you should be having is with accounts in terms of sustainability. And because without accounts, there is no data, and then there's no carbon footprint. And as previously explained, that is how you achieve results. And another point that I don't think is often kind of highlighted is the fact that being a sustainability practitioner and accounts, our work is actually quite similar in the sense that accounts are collating and recording cost, while we are looking at the same information but recording emissions and usage. So being able to relate to accounts in that way and coming up with a system that facilitates both the information you need and what accounts need or need to give really is the game changer. And I think establishing an efficient system of carbon tracking from day one is crucial. And again, no one likes to be contacted in RAP, especially accounts, as we all know. And again, I guess that's, just seeing it from their perspective, that accounts can't, be contacted like in RAP week one, being like, oh yes, we need all fuel figures. That needs to be a conversation from the very beginning in order for it to be an efficient system and one that works, and one where you're actually seeing data in real time as well. And you're not just tracking what you did, you are given the opportunity to actually implement change throughout because you are in real time with the data and see what's happening. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. And I think to add to that, not only for accounts for completing the carbon footprint, but as you touched on before, Anthony, gathering evidence, having that paper trail, starting early is just so important. Like you say, it's not going to be if you are chasing your tail and all of a sudden you're kind of looking back, saying like, oh God, how do we gather all that evidence? Yeah, I think your point
Dara,
earlier
can
on
I
is,
ask, so just for clarity for people who are watching in and maybe haven't done a footprint yet and haven't actually had to deal with accounts, what kind of information are you going to them looking for?
is this for the climate action plan or the footprint?
Let's stick with footprint for a moment. Actually, if we're going for a
Sure.
footprint, we're going to go to accounts. What am I asking them for?
It's kind of, I mean, everything that production spends money on, to be honest. I mean, there's the various different headings under Albert are travel, accommodation, filming spaces, non-filming spaces, materials, and disposal. If I've missed out on one, I'll go back and have a look. But and then there's subheadings under those. So everything from meals, lunches being spent, materials, everything from costume, construction. Now, this is mainly kind of speaking from a scripted studio or location drama. Obviously, sports are going to have another other different areas, but yeah, travel,
non-filming
accommodation.
spaces and sports are going to be quite interesting one to figure out, aren't they?
Yeah, 100%. And that's the other thing, is kind of identifying. A lot of this isn't just going to be going to accounts for this information. Sometimes it's going to be from the vendors themselves. It's my experience anyway. And that's another great opportunity. I know it's something we talked about in the first panel, is as important as your departments are, your suppliers and vendors that you interact with, be that, you know, people who you're getting batteries from, to non-filming like filming spaces in sports, like stadiums, you know, and things like that. Knowing who's using renewable energy, as you said, energy is such an important part of it. And being able to contact people and ask them, what are your credentials? You know, is your hotel using 100% renewable electricity tariff? What actions is your courier company or taxi company taking to move to a more green model? So yeah, like say, the breakdown, it's kind of everything that money is spent on, that you include. But I do think, even if there is sort of confusion from productions about what they need to spend, Albert, or what they need to track, Albert are very reactive and helpful when it comes to answering questions. So they do have support lines and everything else, and they're on hand to answer questions.
I'd also add there as well, in terms of tracking systems, as you mentioned, Dara, as well, that like every single production is different. And it's crucial to have those discussions with each department at the beginning and get a system in place that works. For example, I normally contact catering directly regarding meals. Well, it might be more efficient on another production to go through the production office. So it's about establishing what facilitates the information flow, and the individual departments as well. So yeah, no, it's just important to establish that as early as possible, and then the more efficient it is, then, you know.
100%. Yeah, I don't think there is going to be this, you know, one size fits all approach to it necessarily. Just it necessitates, you know, like I did a climate action plan recently for a 30,000 euro short. That's going to be very, very different to 100 million euro TV series. It's just, they're not going to be the same. So yeah, I think it's just like you said, but regardless of that, having a system in place early on, and sticking to it, you know, just early communication with everyone involved, I think is crucial. So Anthony, when it comes to getting certification, finishing off the final carbon footprint, certification aside, I suppose, why is it so important to finish the calculator? Not just to get the badge.
Okay, there's a couple of things here actually, Darragh. I'm glad you brought up. The first thing to say is, for those people who are new to doing, in particular, I'm talking about Albert footprints here. It's important to recognize that on your company account, you've got an admin person and you've got a reviewer. And that, for instance, if you're doing a Section 481 project from January 23, a final certificate of your emissions will be needed to pass the sustainability tests in 481. But to do that, the admin needs to get the reviewer. The admin needs to get the reviewer to sign off on the footprint, because at that point it gets sent to Albert to get cleared. Now, if you don't do that, you've got your footprint sitting there. If you put all this work in, as in any size, budget, or genre, you put all that work in, getting all that data together, and you've actually missed out on the final piece. So what that has meant is, by the way, at the moment in Ireland, as I said earlier, we've got 200 footprints, over 200 footprints on the island of Ireland. 113 are completed, and there's 60 just sitting there, waiting for that wonderful person to walk in, log back onto the account, and press finalize. And at that point, to get reviewed. So that is, and it has become of an issue, actually, because it means that we're not getting the totality of emissions recorded, which means that we're not going to understand how we're reducing emissions on productions year on year. That's a challenge from a data point of view, because also the other side of all this as well is, as an industry, we are doing some amazing work on sustainability, particularly in the last 12 months. And I think if we can use our data to showcase that, all the better. But again, I think people are getting used to footprints. They're understanding how they work, and it's just embedding itself into the production system, you know. But on carbon action plans, again, they are very new in the Irish context, and people are getting used to them. But that's another reason why it's so important to start early and almost to troubleshoot it really to a degree, But anyway, there you go.
Definitely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I think we have covered a lot about like the benefits that the tool and the plan can give to individual productions, but there is also the sense that you are contributing data to a broader thing, to the industry as a whole. Albert released its report there for 2021 last year. Figures were up from 2020, obviously given the pandemic, things were lower. But yeah, there was 146% increase in the amount of people logging on and submitting data, submitting figures. They have interesting figures on energy, on fuel use. And you're contributing to that as a production who's finalizing their carbon footprint. Like we say, what's measurable is manageable. The more people contributing data and figures, the quicker we're going to find solutions, the quicker we're going to move to different ways of doing things. So yeah, do you have anything to add on that, Alex, just in terms of the importance of finalizing, of completing the footprint? And
Yeah, like I think what you said, Dara, was quite perfect, to be honest with you. I think it's all about, we always have to have the bigger picture in mind. Do you know what I mean? Everything we do on a production not only has an emission, but also a positive impact. At least we have information now that we can carry on to other productions and kind of, I guess, share industry wide in some cases. I mean, it's so important to finish your carbon footprint, and most importantly as well, to actually offset and be carbon neutral. That is a huge important factor in terms of reducing emissions. Obviously, it shouldn't be completely relied on, and we should be introducing measures on productions to actually reduce. However, to have the final data and reporting that, and then also reporting that even in some cases as a case study, is really, really important to share that information with other practitioners, other crew, producers. That's where it's at really, and that's what we need to be doing. And I have full faith we can do it. And I think if we kind of have the right mindset in mind, aware of how important to talk about sustainability early on a production, I think that's really key. And I think everything else will follow from that. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely, Alex. Thanks so much. We might take a couple of questions from the Q&A. I think we have a couple coming into the inbox now. Let's start off with a quick question regarding Albert calculators on international co-productions with other countries. Might start with you, Anthony. Have you found many people?
Yeah, it depends on the broadcaster or the international funder. So, for instance, you may be in a situation where you could have a requirement to do 2 different calculators. You may be in a situation where you just have to do Albert. Like, so for instance, as an example, BBC have a requirement for certification. So when Young Offenders is filming in Cork, which was an international co-production at the time, they had to do the calculator because BBC was a majority funder. You could be in a situation where even if you have a minority fund from, let's say, TG Ceathair on a drama, you will still need to do the footprint. It may mean, though, that depending on the international partner, they may have their own calculator you have to do, and it may mean dual calculating use, which is obviously not ideal, but it's kind of where we're at right now with the situation. But yeah, that's the consideration there.
Yeah, and I think even if you are in a situation that you do to fill out 2 calculators, I think quite often, they do look for quite similar information. And like if it is, while it's not ideal to kind of have to click and drag all of your info from one box to the other, if that's all it is, then it's like I say, it's just submitting more data to the great data cloud. Scott. Do you have anything to add on that, Alex?
In terms of I've recently done that where I had to do 2 calculators at the same time, and it's actually really, really informative because there's a lot of learning involved in doing 2 at the same time, because certain calculators look at specific carbon factors while others don't. For example, I'm trying to think of one. Albert would be logging. I can't think of an example. Of course, this always happens when I'm. But basically, it's funny to not be funny, but interesting to see what, say, for example, a certain calculator would warrant as inclusion, and then others don't. And it's then actually, I've done like a comparison on both, on like two different systems, for example, and that's actually really informative, because you kind of get new learnings from a different system that you might necessarily put into, say you're doing Albert, into Albert, but you can still implement that measure if you think it warrants inclusion, and it actually does reduce emissions. So there is a lot of, there's a lot to be said for doing two at the same time. I mean, it's a lot of work, but but yeah, no, it is really, really informative. I learned a lot from that experience. So.
Totally, yeah, and like we were saying before, like there isn't just going to be a one size fits all system, and using to, like you say, it's picking up on things that might have slipped through the cracks of another one. So yeah, like I say, definitely more work, but 100% worth it. Next, we have a question. How have you found getting information from suppliers and venues? We've struggled with this. Electricity readings, for example. Do you have anything on this, Alex? I might come in after.
Electricity readings, I know with Albert, actually that's a difference. That's one. On a previous carbon calculator I used, you needed the actual the electricity readings. For Albert, you can use benchmarks. So there's an option where if you say, because I know a lot of the time you don't get your electricity readings until like well after wrap. And in that case, obviously, you're finishing up, and you kind of, you can't be waiting around for months and months. However, Albert do have an option where you can basically put in benchmark figures for utility bills.
Yeah, I've certainly come across that, and I think it's a very handy option. I think it's particularly for non-filming spaces they use it. Electricity readings and how much power we use on productions, it was covered on the last webinar 2, how important energy is in productions. And one thing that I've definitely found on Bodkin is power logging is such an important part. Like you say, we all know that fuel is kind of the biggest area where carbon emissions come from in productions, and newer generators, stage 5 generators, they're called, have better filters in them, so there's less particulate matter, but quite a lot of the new ones will also have inbuilt power logging systems where you can tell how much power has been used. You can also get inline power loggers, I think, if you're filming on location, and I'd say that moving forward, I think it'd definitely be great to see more productions using power loggers. Sure the electrics department will sort of know more about it, but yeah, I think definitely getting more of a, like you say, more data, and more sort of baseline data on just how much energy we're using, that's a handy tool for it, and also I think it's a really important thing to measure. So hopefully that helps. We have another question here. Do you find any limitations within the Albert carbon calculator, and if so, how do you work around it? Might start with you, Anthony. I'm happy to come in as well afterwards.
Yeah, like obviously we get feedback from people who have concerns around certain aspects of the calculator. Now the calculator was revised about a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago actually. So it has adapted to the needs of productions since its inception 10 years ago, but there are still issues with it. I actually think one of the things that I've been seeing more and more of is around diesel use and how they calculate the emission of diesel alongside certification and carbon action plans. But in saying that, one of the benefits of where we're at now is the fact that more and more productions are using renewable diesel and HVO, as you know, Dara, on Balkan and Silver, Alex. And the fact that I believe was a Cine Electric announced last week that they are going renewable diesel for all of their generators. So I mean, like, there are limitations to it. The question is correct, obviously, and again, to say anyone who has any questions on any of this, please do get in touch with me in particular, because I can give Albert a shout on your behalf, and let's work through those limitations. Because they are open to feedback, and nothing is perfect, and we all know that. But anyway, there you go.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think like software just gets better and better the more feedback you give with it, and that's just how we're going to get forward. Like I say, I think Albert are very open to feedback on it. Um, just to ask you, when you say the diesel figures, is it that they're calculating them as quite high, or what's the feedback?
It's more about how the diesel emissions are weighted against other actions in a carbon action plan for your certification. So one thing maybe I haven't discussed properly or explained properly is there's different grades to your certification, different star systems. 65 to 75% 1 star, 75 to 85% 2 stars, 85 plus is 3 star. 3 star is a condition of some funders in the UK, for instance. It's not a condition here, as far as I'm aware, of any funder. But so for instance, you could replace diesel with HVO on your production and actually not have a massive amount of impact on your percentage of your CAP, which is unusual when you think of the reduction in emissions. However, it's in the weighting of the overall package, and that I suppose could be seen as a limitation depending on your viewpoint.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, obviously it being a requirement of certain funders to have a certain grade, I think it's pushing people to be ambitious, and I think that's the name of the game. I think is the ambition of it, and the way that we get, say for example, I imagine then if diesel is still weighted as quite high in impact on your carbon action plan, I imagine things like batteries, things like mains power, things like that are going to are going to weigh much more heavily in your favor of having a good 3-star action plan. And for those things, like say Albert, it's a British organization, they're currently probably more available in the UK than they are here. But the way we get them here is by productions using them, is by productions requesting them. There are companies renting these batteries and hybrid generators. Sunbelt, Aggreko, they are available. And the way we get more of them is by showing a need for them. It's by contacting your facilities companies, your teams, asking them to get in touch with their suppliers, saying this is what we're looking for. That's how we get that sweet 3-star plan. Anything to add, Alex?
No, I completely agree. I think, we really, really need to be focusing our attention on the areas of energy usage and alternatives, and eventually down the line looking at hydrogen generators. So exactly as you said, that only comes about by demand and suppliers seeing the demand there, and that only comes about by trialing equipment, logging that data and sharing that data. And again, that only comes around when you have these conversations really, really early on a production, where you give, locations time to look at current suppliers, see if they have any equipment that would be of interest, such as like battery units. And then also looking at other suppliers as well. It's about giving people the means to explore, implement change, and I think that's kind of the cornerstone of all this. But yeah, that's definitely the area we need to be looking at for sure.
Definitely. Thanks so much. Our next question: where do you fill in the action plan? Give that to you, Anthony.
Yeah, basically when you log on to your Albert account and you go to a new production, so you go to log in a new production, say production 1, you'll get 2 options in the top. There'll be calculator and carbon action plan. That's it. So go from there, just pick the second option, and you just get presented with a list of questions. And again, because you're doing it in theory, you are setting out your stall, and what you're going to do then is prove what you're setting out to do. And of course, if during production you find new ways to reduce emissions, that will only be good. Don't feel like you don't have to do it because you've put in your plan in pre-production.
Yeah, 100%. That's the thing. Doesn't need to be restrictive in that sense. Like if you said no, you're not going to do it, and then things change. Like, well, look at that's excellent. Only a plus. So our next question. We are trying to offset on production. Where do we do that? Most of the links seem to be for UK places. Are there Irish places where we can offset? Moreover, are there any places related to the film industry that we can offset to? That last one I think is really interesting. Places related to the film industry. Anthony, this was something we talked about on our first panel. I had a similar question. So I might go back to you on that if that's okay.
Yeah, so the offsetting thing is quite interesting in terms. I'll give you the full backstory to where we're at now. So Albert do, let's say, for instance, on an Albert production, as I understand it, you have to use the Albert program or the Albert Creative Offsets program for it to be merited, we'll say. So we discussed that in Ireland in the Irish context about 2.5 years ago. And when it was introduced, there was a discussion about, well, can't we have an Irish offsetting option? So somewhere in Ireland where they're planting. But Albert don't do it that way. They see things through the Kyoto Protocol, and they want to only do it in developing countries. But what's happened is we've never picked up the conversation again, to be frank about it. So we haven't actually created an Irish option just yet. So I think in the context of the renegotiations at the moment on the contract, I think what we'll do is we'll get the contract renegotiated, and at that point we might look back into the offsets for the Irish market and the Irish context. If it's a non-Albert production and you're looking to offset, I've no doubt there's options for Irish offsetting. I personally don't know what they are, to be honest, but I'm sure you have those options available. But in an Irish film industry context, we don't have that at the moment.
Yeah. I think it's definitely interesting, say, Albert's system going through a protocol where they focus on offsets in developing countries. I have to say, I think even if it was going to be a case where we don't, like say, I think the conversation is going to move forward. It'd be great to get something in Ireland, and it'd be very cool to get something related to the film industry. But I still think it is really, I think that's where a lot of the work needs to happen, is in developing countries. Like it's the global south who are going to suffer the most from the climate crisis. And I think I'd be all for seeing places, whether it's rainforest rehabilitation or anything else like that. Obviously there's not just one area or one place or country, anything that it needs to focus on. So definitely would welcome Irish based offsets, but I think just if we're going to do them, we should do them everywhere. Anything to add on that, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I was aware of I've actually received this exact same question before on productions from producers as well. I think it'd be fantastic to have an Irish offsetting system. I think very much so kind of is the essence of sustainability as well, that you are investing, you're investing in your local economy as well. And it'd be great to see something that also goes back into the film industry, because then it's circular, and then it also could help the film industry even be more sustainable down the line. So there's a lot of merit in that, and I'd be very much for that. That is said, I'm obviously not advocating for only offsetting in Ireland on the film industry, but I do think it should be an option there. And I think Irish productions should be given the choice where they'd like to offset, and if they see the merit in an Irish offsetting system, that should be an option. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, 100%. And from what I've heard, there is kind of work being done privately. I believe Paul Cullen has brought up has done a bit of reforesting himself, facilities guy. So yeah, there are things happening in Ireland, and like I say, I'll definitely look into that, Anthony. I'm sure there are ways outside of Albert to offset. So that's definitely something.
As far as I'm aware, you can offset. You don't have to offset through Albert, but you're awarded a point for offsetting through Albert. It's the current system. Yeah, so like there are, see the offsetting thing is kind of a very big topic that would warrant its own webinar, I feel. But like there are offsetting systems in Ireland that you can definitely offset through, but it's just that it's not Albert certified, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's the current situation.
Fantastic. Brilliant. We have a little bit of time left if there are any other questions. I think that's all the ones answered so far. But while we wait for anyone else to trickle in, I just want to thank both of you so much for this discussion. I think the calculator can be, the very first time you do it, can look a little mystifying. I think people get worried about it, but it's just such a useful tool. moving forward. It's like we've talked about. It's if it isn't already mandated by broadcasters, it's certainly going to be soon. And yeah, I think it's just great to see interest in it and uptake with it. And thanks for all the questions so far.
Can I just add, Dara, thank you both for taking the time across all these webinars. To remind everybody, there is one more webinar to come, which we're all very excited about. It's next Thursday at 1 o'clock, the last of the series. We've got Rose back, ex-Albert alumni, who's now who's now Senior Production Sustainability Manager for ITV Studios. And she's going to chair it. Stars of the panel will be Dara, Alex, and Stan Nangle. And the topic will be all about essentially future casting. Where can we go in our production journey? This year has seen a huge increase in the use of renewable diesel, for instance, on productions, which has a massive impact on emission reduction. It's led to, as we said, electricity suppliers bring it in themselves. And it's also the topic of conversation among other suppliers, but what can we bring in? Hybrid lights, LEDs, and so on and so forth. So what's going to be next year's big leap forward for the sector and in the years to come? So that'll be 1 o'clock. I'll have an email going around, a tweet and a LinkedIn and all the various things. And just one last piece, if anyone has any queries on Albert, on footprint use, on certification, any of that jazz, give me a shout, and I'll do my best to help you.
Fantastic. We have a final question there asking for a webinar on offsets. So maybe for the next sustainability series, Anthony.
Yeah, I'll add it in. I'll add it into the list for next year.
100%. Fantastic. Cool. Look, yeah, I guess if there's no others, then I'll hand back to you, Anthony. Thanks again to you both. Thanks again to everyone who's attended. And yeah, look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Yeah, listen, thanks so much, guys. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's great. And also recorded. I'll email the link around and we can spread the good news.
Brilliant.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. Talk to you all soon.
All the best.
Bye now.